Hello, and welcome to CYC News for today, the 23rd of February 2014 AD and the 16th of Amshir 1730 AM. I'm Mark Aza.
And I'm Justina Shanura. In today's headlines, Pope Tawadros has reportedly met with Saudi officials to establish the first church ever built inside Saudi Arabia. 4 Christians murdered in Alexandria. Ukrainian leaders agreed to call early elections, and torrential storms and powerful winds batter the coast of Britain.
Our news begins in Cairo, where Pope Tawadros has reportedly reached an agreement with the Saudi ambassador in Cairo, Ahmed Katan, to establish the first church ever built inside Saudi Arabia. A source told MCN that Pope Tawadros was extremely happy upon his return to the cathedral in El Abbasiyah, where he met with a German parliamentary delegation after the end of its first visit to the embassy of Saudi Arabia. The Pope thanked the King of Saudi Arabia and the current government for their approval to build the first church, which will be Coptic, and for the warm welcome from the Saudi ambassador in Cairo. At the meeting, the two leaders also discussed consolidating relations between the church and Saudi Arabia, especially after the King of Saudi Arabia pledged to send aid to Egypt after the revolution of June the 30th. His Holiness also expressed his condolences for the victims of the recent fire in a Medina hotel. There are many Egyptian Copts in Saudi Arabia, and there are also more than 1 million Christians from Southeast Asia, particularly from the Philippines.
4 members of a Syrian family living in Egypt were brutally murdered in Alexandria. Joseph Malek, director of the Egyptian Center for Development Studies in Alexandria, called on security agencies and the prosecutor to commit to transparent inquiries and investigations, and demanded the Interior Ministry, the Alexandrian Security Director, and the Criminal Investigations Department be neutral in declaring the facts of the incident. The victims of the crime were a husband stabbed in different parts of his body when he resisted the aggressors, his wife, 6-year-old child, and the husband's sister, all stabbed while they were in bed.
Ukrainian leaders have struck a deal that will see new elections and an end to the bloodshed in Kiev, which claimed dozens of lives. Russian-backed Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych committed to early presidential elections and promised to bring opposition members into the government, but has not yet given a timetable. The Ukrainian president also voted to free former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko from prison. However, Yanukovych will need to officially authorize this in writing. At least 75 people were shot dead and more than 500 injured in the bloody Kiev conflict, which threatened to plunge the country into civil war.
Torrential storms and powerful winds have battered the coast of Britain in recent weeks, causing up to 7 years' worth of erosion and damage in just 2 months. On some stretches of coast, the extreme weather has stripped away sand from stretches of beaches to reveal ancient forests, leaving the stumps of 6,000-year-old oaks protruding. The National Trust, the body which manages much of Britain's most scenic coastline, said the storms have caused problems that it did not expect to have to deal with for years. Cliffs have crumbled, beaches and sand dunes have been eroded, heavy seas have breached defences, and shorelines and harbours have been damaged.
Anne Frank's The Diary of a Young Girl and several other books about the young Holocaust victim have been vandalised in Tokyo public libraries since earlier this year. The damage was mostly in the form of dozens of ripped pages in the books. Librarians have counted at least 265 damaged books at 31 municipal libraries since the end of January. Japan and Nazi Germany were allies in World War II, and though Holocaust denial has occurred in Japan at times, the motive for damaging the Frank books is unclear. Police are investigating. In the Nakano district libraries, the vandals apparently damaged the books, while unnoticed inside reading rooms, according to city officials.
The battle for Venezuela is being fought online as well as in the streets, with authorities cutting off the internet to a clash-torn university city and blocking selected websites and a walkie-talkie service, widely used by protesters. A local TV reporter in San Cristobal, capital of the western border state of Taquira, said Thursday night that she could hear gunshots as tear gas firing police broke up protests just as they had the night before when internet service was cut. San Cristobal, home to 1 private and 3 public universities, is where the current wave of anti-government demonstrations began on February the 2nd. The fiercest unrest since President Hugo Chavez died last March. Later Thursday, the US company Zello told the Associated Press that Venezuela's state-run telecoms company, CAN-TV, had just blocked access to the push-to-talk walkie-talkie app for smartphones and computers that has been a hugely popular organizing tool for protesters from Egypt to Ukraine. Some believe Venezuela's information war, which escalated last week as the government blocked images on Twitter after violence in Caracas claimed 3 lives, is only just beginning. The protesters are fed up with a catalogue of woes that include rampant inflation, food shortages, and one of the world's highest murder rates.
The UN's Human Rights Office has urged Australia to reconsider its policy of shipping asylum seekers to Papua New Guinea, following the deadly riot on Manus Island. Ravina Shamdasani, spokeswoman for the UN High Commissioner on Human Rights, said on Friday that this week's violence at the island's detention centre had thrown the spotlight on a wider problem. Shamdasani stressed the obligation of Australia, PNG and Nauru to ensure that the human rights of asylum seekers were protected in accordance with international standards. An estimated 1,340 asylum seekers are currently being held at Manus Island. Tensions with locals have reportedly spiked, and the detainees recently learned that if their asylum claims were approved, they would only be allowed to settle in Papua New Guinea, not Australia.
Facebook has announced it is buying the fastest growing mobile messaging service WhatsApp in a deal worth $19 billion, expanding the global footprint of the social networking giant. The deal bolsters the world's biggest social network, which has more than 1.2 billion members, with the 450 million strong WhatsApp, which will be operated independently with its own board. It is Facebook's biggest acquisition and comes less than 2 years after Mark Zuckerberg's firm raised $16 billion in the record-breaking tech sector public stock offering.
Devoted dog owners often claim that their pets understand them. Now a new study suggests they could be right. By placing dogs in an MRI scanner, researchers from Hungary found that canine brain reacts to voices in the same way that the human brain does. Emotionally charged sounds such as crying or laughter also prompted similar responses, perhaps explaining why dogs are attuned to human emotions. The work is published by the journal Current Biology. 11 pet dogs took part in the study. Training them took some time. For comparison, the team looked at the brains of 22 human volunteers in the same MRI scanners. The scientists played the people and pooches 200 different sounds, ranging from environmental noises such as car sounds and whistles, to human sounds, but not words, and dog vocalizations. The researchers found that a similar region, the temporal pole, which is the most anterior part of the temporal lobe in the brain, was activated when both the animals and people heard human voices.
And that's all for CYC News for today. Stay tuned for more Christian content on CYC. I'm Justina Shanura.
And I'm Mark Aza. And from the CYC studios in Sydney, Australia, good night and God bless.